Thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A for Shorts Program 2. Let me reintroduce our guests. We've got Bar, director of Her Dance, joining us from Israel. We've got Sean, director of H.A.G.S, joining us from Los Angeles. Welcome. We've got Cosmo, director of ENVIAR, RECIBIR, joining us from New York. And we've got Sorayos, director of New Abnormal, joining us from Thailand. And Güzin, director of Your Street, joining us from Switzerland. So we have quite a global crew with us today, which is really exciting. That's one of the things that makes the virtual Q&A special, is that we get to have people that we wouldn't necessarily be able to have in person. So we're super excited to have you all joining us. I'm going to start off by asking you this question. Your films tackle some important subjects and themes, and some through humor and some through drama, and others like a mix of both. Why did you decide to tell these stories, and what inspired you to make these films, and how personal was that? And I'm just going to start with who's on my screen in the order, and we'll start with Güzin.
Well, a few years ago, I discovered a street on Google Maps that was in Bonn, Germany. And there was nothing special about this street. It was an awkward place somewhere in the outskirts of Bonn. But one thing was special. The street had a Turkish name. And I myself, I am from Turkish origin, and I have studied in Germany. And I know that streets in Germany don't have Turkish names. So something must have happened there. I started to research, and then I found this story.
Yeah, it's a really powerful story. Did you have any idea what you were going to find, or it just kind of unfolded as you were doing the research?
Well, I had no idea what I was going to find. And on the first step, I went there totally by myself, alone. I wanted to be alone, just to become empty, because I didn't want to have any image of this street, any idea of the story. And then, first of all, I found just nothing. It was so awkward. It was like construction sites, and the street wasn't even finished. It was under construction. And then I went there again, and I said, you have to look closely. Maybe you didn't look good enough. And then I found my pictures and my story.
Thank you so much. So Bar, you want to tell us what made you decide to tell the story?
Hi. My film is based on my personal story as a trans woman who grew up in an Orthodox society in Israel. In our society, there is a clear gender separation. You know, if you are a boy, you need to be a boy, and if you are a girl, you need to be a girl. And for me to go through this transition, I had to pay heavy prices with my family and with other members. And I want to tell this story to bring this pain to the screen.
Do you feel that it like you were able to film the scenes without like putting your own kind of perspective on it? You were able to let the character kind of own her space, or was it hard to kind of separate that?
No, I separated. It was important to me. I wanted to explore the family and the main character, that she is the trans woman in the story, and I wanted to see the pain of everybody and the complex, and you know, it's difficult here in our society. So I want to explore this.
It's a very difficult balance to create, and I think you do it masterfully. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorayos, do you want to tell us what made you tell this story? I think I know the answer, but go for it.
COVID.
Yeah. So why did you decide to make a film about it, though, instead of like what made you capture this film, and why do it with so much humor?
Because living here in my country is bad enough. So at least make some benefit out of it with the stupid prime minister sort of some stuff. So that's what I want to relieve myself from that shit.
Gotcha. Yeah, you definitely are able to make a horrible situation more approachable by using humor. And I think I definitely know more about the situation in Thailand during COVID because of your film. So I think it's very successful, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Sean.
Hi. So H.A.G.S was interesting because I think it didn't really start out as a short film. It sort of initially began as research for a feature film that I've been writing and developing that takes place in 2008, which is the year and the era that H.A.G.S kind of revisits. And so I was just started sort of flipping through the sort of yearbooks that I had around that time, which is kind of like, you know, sort of for me, it was late middle school, kind of going into high school, that kind of era. And it was really just to kind of get a sense of the time, how people dressed, how people talked, you know, what the culture was like at the time. But the experience of flipping through the yearbook was just so visceral, and it kind of took me right back to that time. And it was just flipping through the pages made me laugh, you know, it made me emotional, it made me cringe, it made me kind of think about all these things that I, you know, didn't really think or feel for a really long time. And then the experience of getting to the signatures page was always at the, like, for at least for, you know, where I grew up, was always at the very end of the yearbook. Those were just so funny to me. And I think just kind of made me think about what my friends who, you know, I grew up with at the time, and, you know, who are still my friends now, but I think the experience of growing up is kind of, you know, you kind of grow up and you get settled in different parts of the country, and you are not in touch as much, but you kind of know what everyone's up to just because you're never really not connected with the internet anymore. But it kind of made me curious if they were kind of feeling similarly to how I was feeling about kind of growing up and adulthood, and kind of just feeling like a different person than who I was at that time, and kind of seeing what their journeys into adulthood were like, and if they were kind of feeling nervous or anxious like I was, or if they sort of had it all figured out. So decided to call some of them, and the conversations that some of us had were just so meaningful, and I think helped me grow as a person. And so I think it became a worthwhile endeavor to try and see if there was something there to turn into a short.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, it's such a like simple concept on like one level, but then you start to get into some pretty deep stuff. You know, even if it's kind of in this lighthearted way, that's something that when we were sharing this film around, you know, our team, people were really connecting with. They were really connecting with, you know, kind of stories of like first generation, you know, being a first generation kid in high school, those sorts of things. So thank you so much. Cosmo, what inspired you to do this? What made you make the story?
I would say, I think generally my work is usually really personal, and my process involves kind of dealing with like themes that I'm moving through in my own life and sort of like situating them into a character study. And at the time I made this, I was living next to the Forever 21 headquarters in LA. Well, I don't even know if they're the headquarters. They're like, it's like the shipping and receiving headquarters basically. And I was just kind of fascinated by it as this like nexus of hyper masculinity and hyper femininity, because you have, you know, a lot of like strapping burly men who are trafficking these clothes that are like made for little girls basically, but like also hypersexualized. And yeah, I thought it was an interesting environment to kind of like tell a story about someone's exploration of their own gender. And yeah, a lot of, I mean, even though the character is like born as a man, AMAB or what have you, I think there's a lot of myself in that character, and like the relationship that that person has with their kid is like mirrors my relationship with my parents, or I guess at the time that I made it. So yeah, there's just a lot of like personal stuff I think I was moving through that found its way into the script.
That's great. Yeah, the character is so dynamic, and there's the way that you film it, there's no judgments on this person. They're just kind of, discovering this part of themselves. And I think that that's really special. So thank you. So my next question is, okay, when you're making films, right, as much as you try to plan it, there's always things that pop up, change, things that are unexpected. When making your films, were there any surprises? What unexpected things happened, and how did it change the final product of your film? And we're going to start with you again, Güzin.
Well, that's a very interesting question, because this film changed everything in my filmmaking, because before that, I've been making films for more than 20 years now, and I returned to short film with that film just because I wanted to try new forms of storytelling. Short film, to me, is not a shorter version of feature films. It's something totally different. So what I did is, while making this film, I tried out everything. We tried out music, sound, we tried out some details and all that. I never had thought to make a movie that consists only of wide shots, fixed wide shots, and the voiceover. It's the most minimalistic thing I've ever did. And I think it was the right thing to do, but it was difficult for me to get there. I mean, at the end, you just say, yes, of course it has to be like that. How different that it should have been. But to me, this was a huge process. I had to learn a lot about this kind of story, maybe too, because it's new for me. This kind of dramatic story is totally new. So for me, this was a huge way to go.
Well, yeah, it's hard to, take all the tools out of your toolbox and go very minimal, and especially when you're used to doing it in this totally different way. And I think what you chose works perfectly with your film. It makes it laser focused on the story and no distractions. And, you just really feel that gravity of the story. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bar.
Actually, it was my first film, this film, H.A.G.S, and I'm a frequent tour, but I learned to love the unaccepted things. When we get started with the pre-production, and I look after a trans actor for the main lead, and we don't have in Israel any trans actors. We don't have it. So I decided, with all the difficulty, to take a non-actor with Leoz, that played the main character in the film. It was challenging, but I feel that in the end, it is more strong than any other actor that will do this, because she did it with a lot of from herself and from her experience, and it was a big learning from this film.
I never would have guessed that. I never would have guessed that Leoz is not an actor. So
yeah,
wow, it's incredible. Thank you. Sorayos.
Like last year, I was supposed to shoot my first feature film, and then the COVID second wave come to my country, so I have to pause that project. But I still have to work with. I still got the grant for the short film before, so I paused the feature film. So I made the short film. So we shot this film abnormal in January this year. And then it finished around like March or something, and like we start submission, but we still don't have any good news until we got the good news like around August. So it's like from we shoot at January until August, like it's 8 months past, and like my government can do even worse. So luckily we make a COVID film. At one scene we wear masks, so we easy to ADR to dub to redub. So I replaced some dialogue, and that how that the scene about the PPE guy talk about my country not get into the COVID vaccine thing and sort of stuff, and that how I share with you how it's changed. Thing is changed from the beginning.
That's funny. I didn't think of how having a mask would make it easier to do the ADR, but that totally makes sense. That's really funny.
But I did only for one scene.
Yeah. Sean.
The question was what was surprising during the process?
Yeah, like were there any surprises? I mean, it sounds you kind of already touched upon it a little bit. Like you just started these conversations and didn't really know where they were headed. But
yeah, so I guess like I feel like I've described it before as sort of like this short was kind of just like a tiny miracle for me, just because like I think as filmmakers a lot of the time you sort of have some idea of what the end is going to be, and you're kind of going like this until you get there. And for this one, I just had no idea what the end product was going to look like or result, or if we even had a film on our hands. I think every step of the way was kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop, to be like, oh, maybe we'll have these conversations and nothing will come out of, there's nothing really fruitful there. Maybe they're just like, why are you calling me? And then we ended up having some really, I think fruitful and meaningful conversations. And then the sort of process then became like, okay, like, do you want to make this film with me? Do you want to, because I think the process also had to be a collaboration. My friends also had to like source photos for me and videos, and they had to like really be down to be involved. And I was pretty sure they would be, and they were, but that wasn't guaranteed. And so I think every step of the way was just kind of like, there could be nothing here. Like we could always like get to a dead end and be like, oh, well, it was worth trying. But I think, ultimately every step of the way, there's always something surprising and kind of like something being revealed to me within the process that like I thought was really, really just fun and a way of making things that I don't think I've ever done before, where I think the end result ended up kind of being this film that explores adolescence and growing up told through like a very specific point of view of first generation Asian American children of immigrants. But that wasn't the intention going into it either. That was just kind of like, oh, I feel like there's these intersections of these conversations that like, if we can kind of, take these, hours and hours of conversation to filter it through that specific lens, then we have something kind of special. But that wasn't the, intention going into it either. And so I think every step of the way was kind of like a nice surprise. And then certainly like the fact that we have a film that is, I think, hopefully works and hopefully is like fun to watch and like isn't like jumping all over the place, kind of, that it feels cohesive, hopefully, is, something that I didn't really think we could get to. So it's been nice getting to share it with people.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes together. So we really enjoyed it. And it was definitely fun having the conversations that it sparked in our team afterwards. So thank you for that. Cosmo, any surprises, anything come up that changed things?
This was my first time shooting on 16. And it was made for like an absurd amount of money. Like I think that the film processing and scanning probably, and the film itself accounted for like 2/3 of the budget, and because of that, I didn't have a second AC. I had a first AC who was loading film and, pulling focus and doing the lenses and all the things that the first AC does. And he miscalculated the amount of film that we had left. And so on the second day, I think it was like halfway through the day, he realized that we only had like 400 feet left.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And that put heat on me for sure. I mean, I will say, like, if you don't have unlimited funds, shooting on film is generally like you have to know exactly what you want. And in some ways, I really love that, because I think that we tend to overshoot with digital. And I'm an editor. And so this film cut itself together. Like literally I edited it in a day because I had so few setups and so few takes. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was able to like adapt to that, but I did have a moment on set where I was like, oh God, this is like the last, you know, 2 scenes that we shoot are going to be brutal. And I also was working with a non-professional actor, the person who plays the lead character's child, but they killed it. So it was fine. Because, you know, they're a musician, and I feel like musicians are amazing performers. So
Yeah,
I trusted the process.
he's a very good performer. So
Oh, not the lead.
Oh, not the lead.
The lead's kid. Yeah.
The lead's kid. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Still very good. Yeah. So well, thank you so much for that. Okay. I'm going to try this question. I don't know if it's going to work, but one of the things that I was thinking about when considering all the films in this program is that all of your films kind of deal with, on some level, people who are outsiders. So I'm curious, has being a filmmaker taught you anything about how to interact with people? Like, does it make you more of an outsider being behind the camera, or does it make it easier for you to connect with people like in your daily life? I don't know if that makes sense. Güzin, you want to tackle that one first?
Well, this is quite a difficult question. I don't know where to start. I mean, as I told you before, I am from Turkish origin, so my parents are from Turkey, although they are not Turkish. But my mother is like Arab, and my father is more from the Kurdish part. So I have always been outsider. You mean othered by others? So I wanted to belong to the society. I wanted to be like anybody else here. But you know, at some point, they will always tell you, no, you're not. You're kind of different. To me, filmmaking made it much more easier. I think it's easier because I can now say, okay, I am weird. I want to stay weird. I don't want to be part of the society. I mean, there are many societies, but I don't want to be normal. So I am not normal, and I don't have to. So in film world, there are so many different persons from not only from different countries, just different personalities, that I guess to me it was easier. But one thing on my story, I'm talking about a murdered little girl.
Yeah.
She was Turkish. I mean, Turkish from origin. She was born in Germany. So she was not different. It was that these right-wing Nazis, they saw something in her that she wasn't. She wasn't an outsider.
Right.
She could have been German as well, you know. I think that is the difference. I was not born in Switzerland. I was born in Turkey. But Saime, the heroine of my film, she was German. She was born and raised there. So that's maybe the difference. At the end, it's not you who decides if you belong to them. It's them who decide whether you belong to them or not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, because she is othered, but it's not like she's not necessarily another person. They just decide that for her.
Yes, she never looked for being weird as I do, maybe as a filmmaker. I mean, I somehow find it cool to be different now, but she never thought of that. She didn't look for that in her life.
Yeah, she wasn't.
I guess. Yes, she just wanted to be a normal girl, I guess. I didn't know her, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. Bar, I don't know if this question brings up anything in you.
I love what Güzin just said. I very like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
I think that in every part of my life, or almost of them, I feel like an outsider. But when I am a director on set, I feel like this is my area, that this is the space that I can bring my point of view, that everybody is here to tell the story that I bring to them. And then, even if I'm an outsider, this is my world. So I can create a world that this is not so weird. So I think this is the power of the cinema for me. to bring another point of view of the outsider, and this is not this is the main point of view in the movie. So
Yeah,
this is what you see,
absolutely.
and other people can explore themselves
Yeah,
in story. So it's a big thing, I think.
I like that. Yeah, you're making this space for yourself when you're on set. I like that.
Yeah.
Sorayos, any thoughts on this?
Well, I feel like maybe my country, most of them are conservative, and I quite don't like conservative people. That somehow I feel like an outsider, of course. But actually, like past few years, the young generation growing up and they speak their voice and they don't like the conservative too. And actually, by the population is getting more and more. So maybe I feel better now. But back to your question, like am I having problem with people or not? Like let's just say sometimes I think it's up to the that body. I mean, I cannot get along with the body all over the world. Like I have my own what do you call my like yeah. But
Cool.
I don't know if maybe just only that I can answer. Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you. So Sean, I mean, your film obviously opened up conversations with you and your friends, but you know, does being a filmmaker make you feel like more of an outsider, or does it connect you with people, do you think?
I think filmmaking definitely connects me with people, because I do think maybe like you guys can all speak more about it too. Like I do think part of filmmaking is trying to find like common ground with people, especially in the process. Like you don't want to impart judgment, but you bring your own specific experiences into it. And I think that's what helped H.A.G.S become a film, was that like we all had these sort of shared experiences. And I think the interesting thing that I don't know if I'm going to articulate this very elegantly, but I think, you know, one thing that me and my friends that I grew up with in Fremont, California which was, you know, that had a sort of a large Asian American population. It was a city kind of on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, was we were always sort of, I think, feeling like outsiders, but also being a part of the majority of the population. So I think like, you know, this maybe is going to sound a little lofty, but you know, I think part of, you know, there's been a lot of talk about like, I think what it means to be Asian American and sort of like the popular imagination today. And I think when we were 13 years old, there was a little bit of that sort of cognitive dissonance where, you know, we grew up in a city where there were a lot of people that looked like us, and like we weren't necessarily the other in our day-to-day life, but we were kind of outsiders and othered in the sort of like mainstream society. And so there was a lot of, I think, our experience of wanting to be, you know, less Asian at that time, or something, wanting to distance ourselves from everyone who, you know, shared the same culture as us, because that wasn't what was deemed, you know, cool in society. So I think there was explored a little bit in the film where, you know, when I was a kid, everyone was like, oh, you're the coolest Asian. And sort of in my mind, I was like, oh, wait, that's like kind of backhandedly racist. But like at the time, you don't really understand that. It's just like, oh, I'm going to take that, I'm going to internalize it. Same with my friend Fahad, who, you know, people would say, you're the hottest Indian. And he would be like, that's awesome. But he's like, I'm not even Indian. But he wouldn't correct anybody. So I think there was this idea that like we were outsiders, but we also weren't in our day-to-day lives. But like the way people treated us and the way people kind of talked to us, kind of, there was a sort of undercurrent of being like, oh, you are othered, even though you don't look like
Right.
in our sort of day-to-day lives. Yeah. So I don't know. That was kind of, I don't know if that answered the question.
No, totally. Thank you. Cosmo?
Yeah, this is like a whopper of a question that I could talk about for centuries, but I won't. I think as a filmmaker, like I'm always going to be making things about people who are perceived like outsiders, because I suppose that's who I identify with as like a queer and trans person who grew up in a very like normie environment. And as far as like being a filmmaker and working with other people, I think for me, like the number one thing is communication. And that's what I see my job as. I see my job as someone who has to be like emotionally available and able to speak many different languages with all of the other people that I'm working with. And if anything, I think filmmaking has taught me how to be open to other people's perspectives and how to collaborate and how to, I don't know, just, it's all about like people, interpersonal relationships and management. And that's why, I don't know, like auteur theory and like these kind of ideas of filmmaking as like a unilateral exercise are just sort of weird to me. Cause I'm like, if you don't know how to relate to other people, or you don't know how to, just connect, like, I don't understand really how you're good at making movies. I don't know, but that's like my metric, I guess, which is different for everybody.
No, I think that totally makes sense. Thank you all so much. So I'm sorry, but our time is over. And I just want to thank you all for being here today. Thanks to our audience. Just make sure to tell your friends to watch all these amazing films, either virtually or in person at AFI Fest. And you can find out more about all of our screenings, all of our events at fest.afi.com. And I just wanted to thank all of our filmmakers again and have a great day. So thank you all.